Today I want to talk about how ending payment for order flow wouldn't just benefit us, as our orders would finally be routed to lit markets instead of being sold to the highest dark pool bidder, but how it would actually destroy the shorts, causing a massive wave of liquidations. So stay tuned and let's make some money. And now I want to dive straight in with the key information. So, Wolf of Ape Street tweeted at Doug Sifu saying, since payment for order flow is an added expense for you and you're all doing it out of the graciousness of your hearts, why don't we just turn off payment for order flow tomorrow? That way, Doug Sifu and Virtue Financial could save some money for the recession. He said, I'm doing this for you and for Virtue out of the graciousness of my heart. Now we know that both Doug Sifu and Ken Griffin have said numerous times they'd be perfectly happy without payment for order flow as they only see it as an added expense.
Payment for order flow is a cost to me. So if you're going to tell me that by regulatory fiat that one of my major items of expense disappears, I'm okay with that.
Citadel founder and CEO Ken Griffin telling the Economic Club of Chicago today that he would be okay if regulators banned payment for order flow if brokerage firms were still required to secure the best execution for their customers. His comments echo similar ones made by Virtue CEO Doug Sifu last month right here on Fast Money.
Ironically, it's an expense, right?
So right there we can see that both Ken Griffin and Doug Sifu are perfectly happy without payment for order flow as they only see it as a massive expense. They say actually, if anything, they'd be better off without the payment for order flow because they wouldn't have one of their most major expenses. And on top of that, we know that previously Citadel actually argued that payment for order flow should be illegal in the United States. Back in 2004, before Citadel started accepting payment for order flow, they actually didn't like it. If anything, they completely disagreed with it, thinking that it should be illegal. And it isn't just Doug Sifu and Ken Griffin, but it's also Charles Gasparino, who also thinks that payment for order flow is pointless. He said, it always baffles me why the AMC apes hate payment for order flow so much. If Gary Gensler bans it, their beloved stock will still be trading in the single digits. Plus, they'll have to pay full commissions to buy more. But as Gaming Can Be Fun replied, he said, wrong. If it was banned, it would mean that retail wouldn't be shoved aside to keep the price from going up. Citadel Connect is a dark pool, and payment for order flow literally allows them to shove retail orders to it to stop price from rising like they want. Seeing as a large majority of retail buys go through these dark pools and not through the lit markets, these buy orders simply don't move the price. But interestingly enough, even though Ken Griffin and Doug Sifu say they don't like payment for order flow and they'd be happy to have it banned, what they say in the mainstream media and what they actually do is two completely different things. You may remember that Senator Pat Toomey proposed a bill to protect payment for order flow and ensure that it wouldn't be banned. But Senator Pat Toomey has received a giant amount of donations from leading brokerages, market makers and executives, including Ken Griffin, to the tune of $215,000. It says in October 2021, Senator Pat Toomey introduced the Investor Freedom Act of 2021, which would prevent the SEC and FINRA and national securities exchanges from issuing any rules that prohibit payment for order flow. And unsurprisingly, Senator Pat Toomey has received $18,500 from the Securities Investments and Financial Markets Association, $21,000 from Morgan Stanley, $16,000 from Charles Schwab, and at least $18,000 from Ken Griffin. And in total, he's received $215,250 this year alone from leading brokerages, market makers, and executives. So even though Ken Griffin says that he doesn't like payment for order flow and he'd be happy for the ban, he's actually donating significant amounts of money to ensure that a ban doesn't happen. Guys, if you haven't already, be sure to join the free Discord linked in the description below. We've got 1348 indicators and we talk about AMC news and due diligence all day long. And if you haven't yet signed up for Moomoo, you can currently get 15 free stocks worth up to $2,000 each, a whopping total of up to $30,000. And on top of that, Ken Griffin is actively making moves around the world to encourage more payment for order flow abuse. You may have seen recently the EU is suggesting that a curb on dark pool or off-exchange trading of shares in the EU should be completely removed, and they should also scrap the proposed ban on payment for order flow. So clearly the EU is debating about introducing dark pool trading and dark pool manipulation, and is debating about not banning payment for order flow. And only a few days later, Ken Griffin made the active decision to double the amount of Citadel staff in Europe. Ken Griffin and Citadel now employ more than 750 individual staff members in Europe. Coincidentally, this has happened only a few days after the proposal to remove the ban on dark pool trading and to stop the ban on payment for order flow went ahead. Now, a number of countries like the UK specifically have already banned payment for order flow as far back as 2012 because they already recognise that it does present a conflict of interest. A number of these countries know that payment for order flow is no good and it actively promotes market manipulation, and therefore they've banned it. But obviously, Ken Griffin isn't too significantly interested in these countries, but he's jumping in the countries where payment for order flow and market manipulation is basically still fine. Clearly, Ken Griffin is very, very worried about payment for order flow being banned in the US, and that's why he's now actively moving more staff towards the EU. Not only is he moving more staff towards the EU, he's also donating significant amounts of money to senators to try and protect payment for order flow and cancel a ban. He knows that without payment for order flow, he won't be able to stop those buy orders going through the dark pool, and he won't be able to suppress the price of AMC. He knows that without payment for order flow, all of these retail buy orders will be going through the market and will be pushing the price up. And this is also happening at a time when Bloomberg has said there will be a 100% chance of a recession in the next 12 months. Therefore, clearly, Ken Griffin knows that no payment for order flow would cause a massive amount of damage to Citadel securities, especially when there's 100% chance of a recession in the next 12 months. He knows Citadel will be losing massive amounts of liquidity due to a stock market crash and due to investors pulling out their cash, and he can't afford to lose payment for order flow as well, as that's basically the only thing keeping him alive. Stephan also tweeted about how US stocks are currently running their record longest run of quarterly declines since the 2008 crisis. Hedge fund launches have also plummeted to the lowest rate since 2008. We're also seeing US mortgages breaching 6.5% and 7%, the highest rate since 2008. And we're also seeing the 10-year Treasury yield topping 4.2% for the first time again since 2008. And Stephan said, "Are you watching closely?" Clearly the world right now in 2022 is potentially only a few days, a few weeks or a few months away from a 2008 repeat. We know that back in 2008, Ken Griffin almost went bankrupt, and I imagine only survived as a result of payment for order flow. And obviously if Ken Griffin is without payment for order flow this time round in 2022, it's likely that Citadel will end up going bankrupt and being liquidated. Ken Griffin is already preparing by selling off a massive amount of his properties, so far trying to sell off 5 properties all at once. These 5 properties likely have a market value of around $300 to potentially $400 million, and Ken Griffin is selling them for massive losses. He is desperate to try and do anything he can to create more liquidity for Citadel to help them to survive a few more days. And finally, this is also happening at a time when more and more hedge funds are actually biting the dust. You can see here from this screenshot, over the last year and a half or 2 years, we've seen a number of hedge funds biting the dust and going bankrupt. We've seen Tyborn Capital Management, 3 Arrows Capital, Nomura, Tiger Global, Anchorage Capital, Mudrick, Melvin Archegos, Susquehanna, and soon to be up on that list is Citadel. As Biotech Moose tweeted, he said, "And with news that Nomura has exited its AMC short position, we get to update our wall of shame. It looks like we're gonna need a bigger wall." But importantly, as Hang Loose tweeted, he said Nomura exiting doesn't necessarily mean their shorts were actually covered. He said it's more likely the position was actually passed over to an affiliate via rolled swaps. We know that even though these entities and these hedge funds have gone bankrupt, it's very likely they technically didn't close out their short positions, just transfer them to another entity or to an affiliate. For example, we know that Archegos did go bankrupt and all of their positions were liquidated, but we also know their short positions on GameStop and AMC were passed on to Credit Suisse and weren't actually closed out. Again, Mudrick, Melvin, Tyborn Capital Management, Nomura, and a number of others have likely passed on their short positions to Citadel and to other hedge funds we haven't yet heard of. Maybe some have also gone to Virtue, maybe some have also gone to other hedge funds that do disclose positions in their 13F filings, and maybe some of these short positions have gone to hedge funds that we've never heard of because they're using swaps and they don't have to disclose those swaps. But as I said, when we start seeing larger and larger waves of liquidations of these hedge funds, there's only going to be a finite number of hedge funds that can actually receive those short positions from those already bankrupted hedge funds, and it won't be long until they go bankrupt as well, and nobody is left to kick the can. At that point, all of the shorts will be closed out all at once, causing the squeeze. But guys, be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always guys, be sure to ding that notification bell, because that way you'll be alerted when I upload a new video. Cheers.